For decades, the medical message has been incredibly simple and honestly pretty uncompromising. Stay out of the sun. Slather on the sunscreen, wear long sleeves, hide in the shade. But today, in this explainer, we're fundamentally re-examining that exact dogma. As we dig into some really fascinating recent source material, we're going to see that the story of sunlight and our health is way more complex and honestly way more interesting than we ever thought.
So we've been told forever to hide from the sun, right? But what if strict sun avoidance is actually shortening your life? I know, it sounds crazy. Could the very thing we've been warned to avoid at all costs actually be absolutely essential for a longer, healthier life? Well, the data suggests exactly that. Let's dive in.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. The sun avoidance dogma. 2. The mortality paradox. 3. The vitamin D fallacy. 4. The nitric oxide revelation. And finally, 5. Finding the right balance.
Okay, kicking things off with Section 1, the sun avoidance dogma, the established risks of UV radiation.
Now, before we go turning the tables entirely, we absolutely have to acknowledge why this dogma exists in the first place. The facts are undeniable. UVA and UVB radiation are established environmental carcinogens, period. Looking at this diagram, notice how the longer UVA waves penetrate deeply, causing that indirect DNA damage and premature aging? Meanwhile, the shorter UVB waves hit the epidermis directly, causing sunburns and those signature mutations that can lead to skin cancer. It's this exact biological mechanism that built the entire foundation of the strict avoid the sun rule.
Moving right along to Section 2. The mortality paradox, a shocking contradiction.
To really understand the true risk here, we have to look at the massive gap between incidence and actual mortality. For example, there are over 260,000 cases of non-melanoma skin cancer in the UK every single year, but the mortality rate is incredibly low. We're talking just 638 deaths in 2012. Now compare that to cardiovascular disease, which is literally the leading cause of global mortality. It's a killer. We've been hyper-focused on a highly survivable condition while perhaps completely ignoring the one that is actually ending millions of lives.
This brings us to a crucial point found in massive observational studies, like this incredible one from southern Sweden. Get this, researchers tracked 30,000 Swedish women for 25 years. And what did they find? Well, as expected, the sun seekers had a higher incidence of melanoma. But, and here is the huge paradox, the sun avoiders had a significantly increased all-cause mortality. I really want to emphasize that. Avoiding the sun literally increased their chances of dying. And when the researchers looked into exactly why, they found the sun avoiders' reduced lifespan was primarily linked to a big increase in cardiovascular deaths.
Let's actually put a hard number on this effect. Look no further than the UK Biobank cohort data. Tracking hundreds of thousands of white-skinned individuals, the data shows something mind-blowing. For every 300 kilometers you live further south, meaning, more ambient sun exposure, it equates to an increased lifespan of 16 days. Literally, the closer you are to the equator, the longer you live. Wild, right?
Which brings us to Section 3, the vitamin D fallacy, biomarker versus mechanism.
So here's the biological pathway of vitamin D synthesis which triggers when UVB hits our skin. Now, it's absolutely true that low vitamin D strongly correlates with some terrible diseases, hypertension, MS, heart disease, you name it. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Vitamin D acts way more like a dashboard indicator light of your sun exposure rather than the actual engine of your health. It's just a biomarker. Think of it this way. The sun is the engine, and vitamin D is just the exhaust letting you know the engine is running. Listen to this staggering quote from a 2022 editorial in the New England Journal of Medicine. They wrote, "The general population should stop taking vitamin D supplements." Now, why on earth would they say this? Because massive randomized clinical trials involving tens of thousands of participants completely failed to show that taking oral vitamin D reduces cardiovascular disease or cancer. Popping a pill simply does not replace the systemic, full-body benefits of standing in the actual sun.
All right, let's get to the good stuff. Section 4, the nitric oxide revelation, sunlight's true hero.
Meet the true hero of our story, nitric oxide, or NO for short. This is a vital signaling molecule produced right inside your body. Its main job? Relaxing vascular smooth muscle. When those muscles relax, your blood vessels dilate, and boom, your blood pressure drops. It is literally the biological engine that maintains your cardiovascular health. And here is where the magic connection happens. Human skin contains massive stores of nitrogen oxides. When UVA radiation from the sun hits your skin, it actively mobilizes that nitric oxide directly into your systemic blood circulation, completely bypassing the whole vitamin D pathway we just talked about. The sun hits your skin, nitric oxide floods your system, your blood vessels open up, your blood pressure drops, and your heart gets protected. It's an elegant, amazing system. We can perfectly summarize this proof with what researchers call the sunlight quartet. Take a look at how these severe conditions, multiple sclerosis, hypertension, heart disease, and type 2 diabetes, strongly correlate with latitude and season. They get worse in the winter, and they get worse the further away you get from the equator. But look closely at that final column. They are completely unaffected by taking a vitamin D pill. This absolutely proves that a sun-driven, non-vitamin D mechanism like nitric oxide is what's really driving these massive health trends.
Which leads us to our final section, Section 5. Finding the right balance, a new paradigm.
To really understand balance here, we have to zoom out and look at our evolutionary context. Believe it or not, pale skin is a relatively recent genetic adaptation. It evolved pretty rapidly in Europe only about 5,000 years ago, right alongside the shift to farming, and it evolved specifically to maximize UV absorption in low-light environments. So what does this mean for us today? It means that a pale-skinned person in Scotland requires a radically different sun strategy than a dark-skinned person in that exact same location. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
So, what are our actual, actionable takeaways from all this source material? First up, yes, sun exposure carries risks, but strict avoidance is a completely misguided public health risk, especially for older adults living in temperate climates. Second, always remember that oral vitamin D is just not a true substitute for the actual sun. Third, it is the UV exposure itself that protects your heart by releasing that amazing nitric oxide. Ultimately, you have to tailor your sun exposure to your own specific skin type, the season, and your latitude. Balance is everything. Prevent sunburn at all costs, for sure, but ensure you're getting enough UV exposure to keep your cardiovascular engine running smoothly.
So, I want to leave you with this. If the sun truly acts as the biological engine for your cardiovascular health and constantly hiding from it is actually shortening our lifespans, how are you going to balance the risks to safely harness the life-expending power of the sun tomorrow? It's definitely time for a rethink. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.